Friedrich Nietzsche was a German philosopher, poet, and cultural critic. He was one of the key figures in the philosophy of existentialism. Among his famous works are the books Thus Spoke Zarathustra, The Birth of Tragedy, Beyond Good and Evil, and Human, All Too Human. One of Nietzsche's most famous concepts is what he called the will to power. Having desires or values are the will, and the actions you take as a result of those are the power. Power doesn't mean money or influence or status, but rather just achieving whatever goal stems from your will. According to Nietzsche, every living being has a will to power. Figuring out your will and how to use it as a way to power is essential to staying true to yourself. Nietzsche's existentialism emphasizes that each individual human being is completely free and thus completely responsible for their own choices and actions. As a result, he had a strong disdain for group thinking and encouraged people around them to always think for themselves. Which is why in this video we'll discuss how you can stay true to your unique self from the philosophy of Friedrich Nietzsche. Number 1. Don't follow the herd. Nietzsche says, "You have your way, I have my way. As for the right way, the correct way, and the only way, it does not exist." According to Nietzsche, you can't stay true to yourself if you don't really know who you are in the first place. So, in Nietzsche's philosophy, success isn't defined by money or status, but by individuality. Individuality doesn't just mean doing whatever you want, but rather figuring out what you find important in life. What are your values, your moral beliefs, and what do you think the purpose of life is? It's about identifying and expressing yourself instead of just doing what everyone else is doing. Copying what everyone else is doing or following the herd happens unconsciously. If a group takes or recommends a certain action, it feels sensible to follow this advice. For example, most people would classify success as having a good job and earning a high salary, which motivates more individuals to focus on these goals. However, focusing on careers and money doesn't make everybody happy and doesn't fit into everybody's life. Some people would be happiest or make the biggest difference by volunteering, pursuing their creative passions, or staying in a job that doesn't pay much but is satisfying. And that's not the only example. A group, be it a family, culture, social circle, society, anything can have you subconsciously convinced that a certain route to take is the best route in all walks of life. Aside from careers, this can concern relationships, marriage, friendships, family, hobbies, school, and more. When the herd collectively does something, you get the urge to do it too. You don't even think about it. And as long as you don't actively hate the path that the others are following, it might seem like the best one. But why is Nietzsche so strongly against letting yourself be led by a group? While following a group might lead to some degree of satisfaction, you sacrifice individuality, growth, and all the changes you could make if you were to choose your own path. You deny the world and people around you the gift of your own authenticity. Only you can know what path would lead you to be your happiest, most unique, and most successful self. There's no recipe for universal happiness or success. There's not even a universal definition of happiness or success. So while following the herd doesn't have to be terrible, it'll never be great because you will never truly be yourself. Number 2. Trust your opinion. According to Nietzsche, one must shed the bad taste of wanting to agree with many. Good is no longer good when one's neighbor mouths it. One of the most damaging things you could possibly do, Nietzsche says, is to trust the opinion of the public over your own. Following the herd mostly happens unconsciously, but letting others determine our opinions? Not so much. We allow it to happen. Psychological experiments have even shown that when asked a question, people will give an answer that's obviously, undoubtedly wrong if the others around that person have also given that answer. We often trust others over ourselves, even complete strangers. We assume that others are trustworthy and that somebody must be more knowledgeable than we are, and sometimes this works. For example, if you see all the cars in front of you turning around, it's far more likely there's an obstruction ahead that they can't get past than they all simultaneously left something at home and had to immediately turn back. So you're probably better off turning around too. However, one's urge to follow popular opinion has evolved past simple scenarios like those. Instead, we find it in many aspects of life. Fashion, careers, speech, food, basically everywhere. When everybody likes or does something, we often feel the urge to do the same. We're all still just a sheep in the herd. Moreover, people tend to have opinions on almost everything nowadays because it's expected. For example, whenever there's a war going on, people expect you to cast judgment on the two sides of that war, to talk about it openly. And while the practice of keeping up with the world is of course commendable, people tend to form opinions quickly, without doing much research, just to be able to join conversations. The same goes for trends, foods, even psychological ideas. Everybody has an opinion on everything. From relationships to parenting tips, from the local supermarket to the stock market. And often those opinions are based on the opinions people have heard around them instead of careful consideration and research. This results in a society where people use a lot of words, but say very little. So how do you gain trust in your own opinions and the confidence to be open about them? First of all, you have to accept loneliness, because it will be lonely. People often avoid or laugh at those with different views. You will come face to face with confused or judgmental reactions from others. So you will have to learn to support yourself and embrace your own reasoning and judgment. Second of all, you can cultivate your judgment by asking yourself questions whenever you find yourself casting a certain judgment about something. What is my opinion exactly? Do I need to have an opinion on this? How did I form this opinion? What's my first instinct, and does it contrast with my opinion? If you stand still every now and then to consider your opinions, you'll find that you've much more uniqueness and ideas in you than you may have thought. Number 3. Seek out knowledge. In the words of Nietzsche, sometimes people don't want to hear the truth because they don't want their illusions destroyed. Knowledge is the basis of everything, especially when it comes to our identity and growth. Self-knowledge can only be had if there's also knowledge of others and the world. And the more knowledge about the latter two we gain, the more we can cultivate our self-knowledge. Furthermore, one of the key words when it comes to forming your opinion and not following others is research. Trusting your own opinion doesn't mean thinking that you're the smartest in the room. Instead, it means that if you do have an opinion, you must know why you have it and be able to defend it. The only way to achieve this is by seeking out lots of knowledge. Nietzsche stressed that a search for knowledge was absolutely essential if you want to be as true and genuine as you can be. Knowledge is everywhere if you know how to be open to it. In a museum, in a theatre play, when you take a walk through a forest, all those experiences can teach you something. Most of us go about our lives with tunnel vision on our tasks and goals. They're closed off to the teachings of the world and thus remain the exact same. But when you look at the world around you through a curious lens, you'll find that there are many things that can inspire you or make you question your life, actions, or goals. Whenever something speaks to you, listen to it and consider it. For example, going to a history museum can teach you much about how to act in the present, and going to an art museum can teach you about your values and morals in a completely new way. You just have to remind yourself to pay attention and allow yourself the time to consider the things you'd normally walk past. Besides this, of course, knowledge can also be found purposely. In research, for example, as we just mentioned. Doing your research can be hard. Aside from having to navigate sources and spend time and energy, it can lead you to find undesirable conclusions. For example, studies you find when doing research might lead to the opposite conclusion than you originally thought you'd reach. Whenever studies or research don't support your opinion, you could become a little frustrated or even be in denial. People who favor their opinion or instincts over knowledge proceed to ignore studies or look for more biased sources to cite. This, of course, is a problem. Nietzsche had a beautiful comparison to those who refuse to change their mind. Just like how a healthy snake has to shed its skin, a healthy mind has to be able to change its opinions sometimes. Someone who's a true individual and true to themselves never stops growing and changing. So in order to be true to yourself, you should never stop seeking knowledge. Number 4. Live dangerously. Nietzsche teaches us that healthy, strong individuals seek self-expansion by experimenting and by living dangerously. Many people like to live in safety. This is understandable and in many aspects advisable. You probably shouldn't move to a war-torn country or ignore safety instructions on a flight. However, our desire for safety goes much further than that. People tend to instinctively see anything that's risky as something irrational. But taking risks is not irrational. In fact, according to Nietzsche, it's absolutely necessary in order to live a successful and fulfilling life. Everyone has the urge to surround themselves with what they know. They settle down somewhere, stay in the same job, and surround themselves with the people they've known all their life. We often like to make lists of pros and cons when it comes to decisions, and weighing them is seen as a sensible and good way of making decisions. Again, in some cases, this is. But comparing pros to cons is also a safety net that keeps us from doing the most we can. When it comes to absolutely new situations, you don't even know what the pros or cons will be. Some situations are so new or uncertain that you can only find out what it'll be like by actually doing it. And unknown experiences can be scary, so we often write them off and ignore them. Nietzsche considered the urge to stay inside our comfort zone to be detrimental to our individual growth. The more you experience in life, the more you will learn and know, and the more your perspective on life, the world, and your purpose will change. This is because exploring all the world has to offer will show you things that you never even considered. Different cultures, ways of thinking, ways of learning, moralities, and so much more. So, to get out of your comfort zone, risks are absolutely essential. You have to make hard choices and stick to them. Examples of those choices are to explore the world, move to another country, take a year-long job on the other side of the world, join a community that you don't know, quit your job if it gets too monotonous, and try something new. You have to walk into the unknown with your head held high. And this is what Nietzsche preached. Explore what you don't know. Walk into situations that are completely alien to you. Make decisions based on your curiosity and love of the world, rather than pure logic or risk analysis. If you do that, you will grow as a person. The dangerous paths you choose for yourself will be challenging. You'll have to make new kinds of decisions, rely on your own judgment, encounter all kinds of unfamiliar situations, and thus you'll gain so much more knowledge and experience than you ever would have otherwise. And moreover, you'll get to know yourself. New experiences can change you more in a few days than a lifetime in your comfort zone would. And these changes are absolutely essential to anyone who wants to truly live their own life by their own rules. Number 5. Spend time in solitude. To quote Nietzsche, "All truly great thoughts are conceived while walking." In our modern world, the majority of us have busy schedules filled with work, family, and friends. Even when we're alone doing household chores or right before bed, we find distractions from ourselves in the form of music, TV, social media, or any other form of entertainment. Rarely nowadays is anyone ever alone with their thoughts. According to Nietzsche, it's extremely important to sometimes embrace solitude in order to cultivate your thinking. In fact, Nietzsche believed that truly original and helpful thoughts were mostly created in peaceful solitude. When surrounded by people, checklists, and notifications, your head is way too busy to truly deep dive into any philosophical subjects. Moreover, when you're always in a group, you can never truly avoid being influenced by that group. And thus, those who never really embrace solitude, which is most of us, never have the time to deeply consider their life, individuality, morals, goals, and philosophical ideas. As a result, you might never learn to stray from the herd and learn how to follow your own opinions. Nietzsche advises us to take time for oneself in the most basic ways. Go for long walks in nature, alone. Sit on your bedroom floor with your eyes closed for a while. Turn off your phone, go to an art museum, and stay for a long time. Do it alone, and encourage yourself to think about everything you see, feel, hear, and experience. When you allow yourself your own company, you'll find out what an insightful and helpful conversational partner you can be to yourself. Number 6. Find your meaning. In our final quote from Nietzsche for this video, he says, "Meaning and morality of one's life comes from within one's self." Nietzsche's most famous quote is, "God is dead." But this wasn't meant literally. Nietzsche didn't mean that God once existed and has now died, but rather used God as a metaphor for meaning. In the very religious past, God defined every aspect of everybody's lives. The Bible and church dictated how people should dress, behave, act, and live, and thus there was no room for individuality, risks, or personal goals. Everything was because of and for God. Modern life has advanced a lot from old-fashioned religion. Most people are free to live their lives however they please, whether they're religious or not. It's mostly acknowledged that life itself is precious and important, instead of merely a means to get to the afterlife. But this has one very intense side effect. Life no longer has an explicit goal. We're no longer destined to follow a certain religious way blindly. We have to think for ourselves. Life is no longer automatically meaningful. We have to give our own lives meaning. Meaning is a source of inspiration and motivation, and psychological conditions such as depression are often accompanied or even caused by the conviction that life lacks meaning. But how do you find your own meaning if we can't even define meaning in general? As a true existentialist, Nietzsche left meaning completely open because he was absolutely convinced of its subjective and individual nature. According to his philosophy, the meaning of life is to give your life meaning, whatever that meaning is. The only universal guide for meaning is that it should be there. On an individual scale, you have to decide what that meaning is. Meaning is like being handed a pen and being told that you have to draw the illustration yourself. Your meaning in life should always be specific and true to you. So you have to find yourself and stay true to yourself in order to find it. Ask yourself, what do I truly value, find important, or want to achieve? Then you will have your meaning. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to check out our full Philosophies for Life playlist, and for more videos to help you find success and happiness using beautiful philosophical wisdom, don't forget to subscribe. Thanks so much for watching.